All right, welcome to the January 10th, 2022 Master Plan Implementation Committee monthly meeting. Pursuant to the Chapter 20 Acts, try that again. Pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, this meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee will be conducted via remote means. Specific information and general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town's website at www.northandoverma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so on their televisions by turning to Comcast Channel 8 or Verizon Channel 26 or online at www.northandovercam.org. No in-person attendance of the members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. In the event that we are unable to do so, despite best efforts, we will post on the Town of North Andover website an audio or video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting. If the public would like to participate in public meetings, please email your question, comment prior to or during the meeting to jstrauss@northandoverma.gov. The question comment will be read during the proceedings and responded to accordingly. All right. First things first, after reading that, do we have anybody that is willing to record minutes?
I can do that.
Okay, thank you, Stan. All right. So I have not received any public comments. Andrew, I assume you haven't, but have by any chance have you?
I have not. And before we get rolling down the agenda, if you could just call a roll too, just to make sure people at home.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's do a quick roll call. J. Dowd?
Here.
Stan Lippert?
Here.
Kelly Cormier?
Here.
George Culler?
Here.
Meredith Barnes Cook?
Here.
Sean McDonough?
Here.
And myself, John Strauss, I'm here. Note that Holly Williams and Chris Nobley are absent at this time and are not joining us this evening. All right. First up on our agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from the December 13th meeting. If anyone wants to put forth a motion to accept the meeting minutes.
So moved. So moved.
I'll second that.
All right. All right, go around real quick. All those in favor?
Waiting for the audio that was J. Dowd that seconded.
Correct.
Okay. Noted. All right, go around real quick. In favor of passing that, J. Dowd?
Yay, aye.
Stan Lippert?
Yes.
Kelly Cormier?
I will not vote because I wasn't at that meeting.
Noted. George Culler?
Yes.
Meredith Barnes Cook?
Yes.
Sean McDonough?
Yes.
And myself, John Strauss, is a yes. All right, that moves forward then. All right. I'll start it. Next up on the agenda is a discussion regarding the master plan's implementation status report. That also includes, well, I'm sure we can dovetail that in slightly. I know it's on the agenda later on is the website discussion. So let's focus first on the actual data behind that, and then we can later move on to the actual presentation of what we're discussing at the moment. If that makes any sense, or I'm open to any comments if you want to steer it in a different direction.
No, that sounds good. Do that.
So I know Chris had mentioned that he kind of went through that. So backing up a bit, during last month's meeting, I resent the link to the, for lack of a better term, working spreadsheet that we have regarding, the status of all the elements and strategies. with the intention that the subcommittees that we've kind of established go through and try to populate answers where applicable, to give to provide some kind of status updates where you could give something solid. I know Chris said he took a stab and went back, and I glanced through them quickly this morning. And again, we've got a bunch of the transportation and economic development ones accounted for as well. So I don't know where the other subcommittees have or stand at this time as far as doing any of that work.
Meredith took a real good stab at public facilities.
Okay.
So there's a bunch of blanks there filled in, and there's probably more that can be done. Well, she really did some heroic work to get that filled in. So that's another area that I think we're going to be okay with too.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Kelly.
Not to speak for my fellow land use and housing committee members, but I did not take a look and fill this in, so I don't know.
I was going to say, I'll confess that I didn't do anything with housing and land use, but whatever comments I would make, I think I will wait until we talk about the web page, because it seems to me that, well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but it seems to me there's some redundancy now, and I would suggest maybe we should focus on the web page. But that's
yeah, George, I thought that, but then, for that facilities subgroup, the webpage, we hadn't gotten there yet. And so I figured taking a run that needs an expert set of eyes, Jean, Daniel, Andrew, to look at. Are those interpretations appropriate and appropriately stated, and they need to be made more kind of publishable? What I figured we were doing was starting to tee up some of fleshing out those additional pages of the web page. And Andrew, you're nodding. I'm not sure if that aligns with what your vision was, but.
Yeah, just to respond, I would say that, and again, we can dive more deeply into it during the webpage discussion, but the approach to the webpage was basically I sort of set up the template for the webpage. I briefly discussed a little bit at the last meeting, and then I kind of, after I sort of got a little bit of positive affirmation from you all at the last meeting, Dan and I sort of went forward and filled in more of it. And my goal at this meeting today was to, when we get to that discussion, get further affirmation if we're going in the right direction, and then even just to even get a nod to say, yes, let's go ahead and publish this on the MPIC committee page so that people can start to see it, even though it's not a fully fleshed out yet, and even though we don't have every strategy filled in. That'll happen. That'll come in due time. And yes, if there were, to your point, Meredith, you looked at public facilities. If there were certain strategies in there where you were able to, come up with some progress that had been made, and then we just needed to sort of fully vet it in this forum, we can certainly do that, and then pivot to getting it on the webpage as soon as possible and publishing it. So it's not a problem. Sure.
Is it our discussion at our last meeting? Jay had brought up the fact that it would be helpful to have a little story to go with every area. And would it be possible to recycle some of the text that's in the master plan itself for each of the element areas as kind of the lead-in for those areas? Is that recyclable text so we don't have to start from scratch?
Well, what I'll say is, no, that's good feedback, Stan. Without answering it directly, what I'd say is, we did have a link in the agenda to some content that Jay had drafted in that regard to sort of refer back to some of what he was trying to articulate last time with respect to story weaving into the different master plan overarching themes. So you all can certainly take a look at what he drafted. He can certainly present that information. You can take a look at it, and it's up to you guys on how you want to, whether you want to do what you're saying, Stan, which is maybe take more directly from
whatever. I guess it's whatever's whatever is easier, whatever works most easily for us to try to get there. And I'm a big fan of recycling, so just saying, if that would help with some of the 1 or 2 paragraph narrative lead-ins, I'm going to assume that the public hasn't probably read the master plan, so that's not going to be old news to them if we reuse it. So anyway, and to George's point, I think I see the stuff that you put together, Meredith, getting extracted and put into kind of a bullet format that sort of fits in with what the web page format's starting to look like. Is that sort of what you were thinking? It just sounded like that was just a convenient place to put that information for the time being, but then it would be extracted and moved to the web page at some point.
Absolutely. I spent time on the website again, saw the structure of it, and kind of that influenced how I organized. But again, what you'll see out there definitely needs some refinement and wordsmithing, and again, validation. That the information that I found that I put out there sounds appropriate. Is in fact something completed? Then based on the summary, is it still an ongoing, for example?
Yeah.
Dan, I have a question. Do you envision this working spreadsheet to be accessible to the public along with the master plan implementation page that we're going to talk about later? Do you envision both of those being presented to the public?
Yes.
Okay, I don't, but that's just my opinion.
Why, George?
Well, I think that I think they're redundant, basically. I mean, they might reflect different stages of development of thought, but I don't think the public needs to know the development of our thoughts. The public just needs to know sort of what our latest thinking is. And so one is sufficient.
Can I interject real quick here?
Sure.
Because I actually kind of agree with George as far as a redundancy. The way I'm envisioning it right now, just from a hierarchical standpoint, is that the spreadsheet that we have right now is basically, that's our working copy. As stuff gets updated, that's our central source for providing updates. From that, so first of all, backing up a bit, so we have the narrative that Jay proposed. So if you were to click on the website, I have the website here. I'm just kind of looking at it on the side. That we have like narratives as Jay wrote for a particular element, an overarching theme, broad-based. And then when you click on that, and so if I was to click on land use, and we'd have you go to the land use page, and there's the narrative there, and it's an overarching theme, kind of on the general side. And then for additional, if you want more detailed information, you click down on the individual strategies, and where we've already populated the spreadsheet, basically we take that information, and you'll see that same information presented on under that strategy on the web page. And that will be your central source for that information. So you don't have the spreadsheet. The spreadsheet's just where we cut and copy information from to update the website. But I think you just want to have one centralized location to keep it as straightforward as possible. At least that's how I envision it. Again, I'm open to any conversation, discussion we want to have collectively.
I think as long as we include the sentence or 2 sentences that describe each of the strategies when we put the other information in there, I think I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's there. It's there.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying, I'm just saying, as long as we do that, I'm okay.
Keep it there. Keep it there. Yeah. Okay.
So because if not, then this becomes more mysterious to the public if they try to read this document and go, what does that all mean? What are they talking about? What is it? How does that all fit together? So
to get us a little bit back on track, do you guys want to discuss the document at least up until or through the updates, the Meredith input, and then move on to the next thing, and then we can delve further when we get to the webpage itself? Or What's the best way to do this? To be efficient with time.
I would like to, so I don't know. Has everybody had a chance to look at the draft website, for lack of a better term? All right.
Yes.
And are we all in general agreement that the skeletal structure that's proposed there works for what we want to do? I'm inclined to think it's pretty straightforward. And again, I'm more of keep it as simple as possible, that if anybody off the street looks at it, they can just make a few clicks and understand what's going on. So that's kind of how I'd like to operate. But and I think Dan and Andrew have done a fairly robust job at setting this up for us, where we can take it and run with it, just populating information underneath what's been established.
Yeah, and then maybe you said this, but I think something like Jay's draft overview of transportation, there could be a link. Take Dan's webpage. Underneath the underneath the element title, there's a link to each of the strategies. Well, above those links, underneath the title and above those links, could be a link to overview of this element or something like that. And that's where Jay's overview could go.
I figured we just have the narrative posted there without just have it straightforward and put the narrative right there on that page. When you click on transportation, the first thing you see underneath the header is the narrative, and then below that is the click any strategy below to reveal updates in progress.
What I would worry about is people wouldn't even know the links to the strategies were there, because that overview is going to take a whole screen, maybe more.
Maybe we just have a couple of subheaders there.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Just a link to overview.
Okay, yeah, that would work if you just put overview and then details type thing. Overview one side and then details.
Well,
next.
then when you click on
why are we concerned that people are not going to want to read stuff? Is that a problem?
Oh, it's just a formatting thing, just so people have quick links to scroll to the pertinent information they're looking for.
Okay, I just go ahead.
No, I like that you had asked John just for feedback of the site itself. I think it's great, right? Keep it simple. I think it should align to the master plan. It's the only thing that I'm wondering is kind of and I'm asking this a little ridiculously, but what's the purpose of it, right? Like, is it just a rehash of the master plan, or are we going to have for each strategy, if it's done or not done, like finished, in progress, finished, how are we going to indicate sort of the stop, start, done?
So
no, I think the title of the page is excellent. Master plan implementation. And the only thought I had is perhaps I debated with myself whether or not to add a fourth word, status, master plan implementation status. I decided I don't know what's the matter.
I'm looking at the actual site. Am I looking in the wrong place? I'm sorry.
If you're looking at the website, then you're looking in the right place. So just on that issue, just to respond to what Kelly is bringing up, and I believe I articulated something like this the last time we met. And if you all feel completely different from this, that's fine. I've come to the conclusion myself. I know we came out of the gate sort of trying to identify strategies that were quote unquote done, complete versus not complete versus in progress, and so to speak. I'm kind of off that kick personally. I'm more in the camp of pretty much, I would say over 90% of the strategies are not open and shut cases. They're not, all of them could be, you could do a million things, you could do one thing, but you could do things to advance them. A couple of them can be open and shut cases, like getting a complete streets policy enacted. That's a straightforward, you did it or you didn't do it, complete or not. And where that's noted in the site, we just say that we just had a complete streets enacted, and that's that. So people can come to the conclusion logically if they read that okay, we completed what we need. We don't have to put more verbiage that says this is complete. So I think for every strategy, this is my view, for every strategy, you just notate what's gone on in advancement of those strategies. Some will have 3 or 4 bullet points, maybe more. Some may have 1. And then other strategies may not have others, and that can give you all, as a master plan implementation committee and as the public, a cue to say, what are we doing with this? And an example, just to give an example of that, in strategy 19, under housing, the last strategy under housing, the strategy is create an accessory dwelling unit bylaw that would allow small accessory residential units on existing residential parcels. Well, we don't have one. And I know that, and Jean's on the call, I know that she introduced a draft ADU bylaw, I think sometime last year to the planning board, but I think the planning board decided it didn't want to, and I don't want to characterize the planning board's discussion, but my understanding was they kind of wanted to move on to other things. And so they didn't take a close look at this to advance it to any consideration of the town meeting vote. So there's really not much of an update there per se. And so if this body wanted to say, well, we really should refocus attention on that, you could do that. That's your prerogative to say, look, we haven't done it. Let's do it. It's in the master plan.
So I completely agree with what you're saying, Andrew, in terms of some things aren't open and shut, right? It's hard, like not 80, 90%, some high percentage of these are ongoing. So I guess to my point, do we just to try to make it easy for people to look at, right? It's a lot of information. Like do people, or maybe you talked about this last time when I wasn't here, so it's a done discussion, but do we want any kind of indicator for things that, you know, are in progress? Being that maybe it's not a done isn't so valid. Maybe there's only, you know, Andrew, to your point, a handful of things that actually get done. But do we mark some things in progress so people can look at it and go, hey, the town is working through, you know, 75 items on our master plan. So, you know, one of the big conversations we always had was making, you know, we got 20 years or 18, 17, whatever it is to get this done, right? Done being you know, worked on might be a better point, but do we want to show this on this page or not? Is that not the right place?
Andrew and Kelly, I think a good place to include a note about something that's not done is in that narrative, in the opening narrative of the section. And Andrew, that's a bit of a hot potato that you called attention to. And I mean, I personally think that something like that should be included in the narrative. And it's in the master plan. We've done nothing about it. That's the bad news, I guess. You know, we have to portray the good news of the projects that are getting done, the things that are in progress. And we also have to make note, not a big deal, but at least make note of things that aren't getting done.
So are you kind of leading then, James, that for the things that that aren't in progress yet should have some kind of big red stoplight indicator of not working on it?
Not a big red light, but they should be included. Or let me put it this way, an easy place to include them is in the narrative.
I would actually counter that I think the narrative should be a bit more broad, and hear me out on this. The narrative should be on the broad side with the and this goes for every single category or element, is that there should be some language that basically says some of these have been completed, some of these are in progress or ongoing, and some have yet to be have yet to commence. And because that applies to all of them, but I think the narrative should be, this is what it discusses. There are certain items have been completed at this time. Certain items are and then for more information, and then after the narrative, for more information, click on each, and click on the individual strategies to learn more, or for a current status or something to that effect. And that, I think that, because it's going to be a lot of information, but I'd rather have, if I'm looking at a website, I'd rather have the specific information completely available than to have just the broad-based explanations. I think the narrative is your, either you're going in there to get a general idea of what's happening, or you're going to go in there and get a specific idea. The narrative gives you that generalization, and then you'll have the specific information if you're looking for it below.
John, that's good. But is it our job as members of this committee to acknowledge when something isn't getting done?
Well, I think that's where I think you can touch on that in the narrative, but for the specifics so say that there's a goal element strategy that hasn't been touched yet.
Right.
We can basically, you click on that strategy and you say that this strategy, yet to be implemented, yet to be acted upon, whatever the applicable language, and we can come up with some standardized nomenclature to use in those cases, so it's consistent across the board.
I know as I mentioned, that the issue that Andrew called our attention to is kind of bad news. I mean, it does have a not in my backyard undertone to it. And, the challenge would be, well, how do you put that in print? By the same token, it's not done. And it's in the master plan. How do we address it?
So maybe, is it something more we kind of make it a little easier rather than trying to say something done or not done? Is it kind of needs attention, underway? It needs attention could be good or bad, right? Like,
well, Kelly, absolutely. Those are perfect terms to use. But let's just take the one that Andrew threw out there. And what I'm wondering and questioning is, for all of us to think about, is how do you handle news that's not so good? Is it our responsibility to pass that on too?
I look at it and say it's a simple statement of, there's like I think some of us are saying here is, for the things that haven't been started, there's no progress to report on this item as of whatever time frame. And just leave it at that. I mean, there's progress on everything. The reality is we can't make progress on everything all at once, so we'll get nothing accomplished.
And I don't think it's I don't think it's necessarily our task to weigh if it's, in this case where we're presenting information. I know we've done the, when we break out and do our rubric there where we examine, okay, is this a positive or a negative? I don't think this is the place for that necessarily. This is, here's the strategy, here's the update.
Status.
Has it been completed? Is it ongoing? Is it being worked on? Or it is yet to be worked on? And if that is a negative, then it speaks for itself, but we don't have to point that out per se. So,
so yet to be worked on is the phrase you're looking for then?
Something to that effect.
Or no progress to report, or
needs attention, right? Because something that means it might be no one's picked it up, might be someone picked it up and it's not good. Yeah, because it's kind of a broad statement, right?
And this kind of will work as a segue to our quarterly report. But if we have certain items that we think we need to address, like we did when we first with the complete streets, and we go and identify it, then we can say that the Master Plan Implementation Committee has identified this as a prioritized strategy at this time, if we want to go that route.
And I think, as someone else mentioned, by going through, and identifying, progress at this point in time, and some of those key, as the website does, some key, where there's going to be some multiple points of progress that have been made since the plan was originally implemented, where we say, wow, we don't have an update. Now we're at the point of, we can come back as a group and say, here are the 5, 10, 15, whatever items where we have nothing, we confirm we have nothing to share in terms of progress. Now let's talk about that.
Sure.
Let's talk about how do we start thinking about what are the relative priorities of those, do we believe, or what are the additional inputs we need to go back and get to figure out for those 15, 20, 30, whatever they may be, where at this moment in time, we can't identify some specific progress that has been reached. And that gives us kind of that next round of focus.
One issue regarding housing that's going to be pretty difficult to make sound good is that we're below our state required number of affordable housing. And I mean, how do we write a narrative, George, when you think of this, how do we write a narrative, Kelly, for the housing elements and not talk about that?
Well, we can. Yes, we mentioned it. We certainly don't want to make it sound good. It's a fact that can be mentioned.
I think that's where you stay factual, right? Like, just this
Well,
is our goal. Here's where we're at.
It's not. Excuse me. It's not going to sound good, and yet it's an explanation for our fellow citizens to explain some of the large apartment complexes and proposals that they're not happy with.
Yeah,
But let
yeah,
the
so
data
it's,
speak.
here's where we are, is, if there's, if we're not at, here's what the goal was, if we're not at the goal, is there anything that's under consideration in progress toward it or not? Because that's another piece, is some of these things don't flip on a dime. There may be certain things of the plan that, yeah, there's something in flight and it's got a 2 or 3 year timeline to achieve it. So we're not there yet, but there's something in progress, as opposed to we're not there yet. For me, it's like, I know we're not there yet. Do we know if anything's in flight? And if not, why not?
Sure.
And again, does that put that to, raise that up on our collective list to start talking about that, and, the appropriate groups that we need to engage on a particular item?
I got a couple. I know Andrew raised his hand. I don't want to leave him hanging. I know
Sorry.
Stan's got his hand raised as well, so I want to let people chime in here. So
I'll be super quick. So number one, I want to remind you guys that we're butting up against the select board again, so we need to be wrapped up by I think 6:30 at the latest. So I just want to remind people. Second of all, and everything that's being discussed tonight. Kelly brought up some good points about how do we notate sort of the level of completeness or lack thereof for some of these strategies. I think it's a valid thing to discuss. I don't think, though, and I just don't want people to get hung up on this, we don't have to make final decisions tonight. I think this webpage can be more or less a work in progress for a good period of time. It can be a living document that doesn't have to stay the same. What you say looks good right now doesn't have to be what you say looks good 3 months from now, or 6 months from now, or a year from now. We can make dynamic edits to this. I think, if you guys are comfortable enough with the format of the page and sort of the general amount of information that's being put out there and the way it's being put out there, we can do sort of a soft publishing of the site where we just link to it on the Master Plan Implementation Committee website or webpage, and then not really necessarily announce it to the public or say, hey, look, there's this new page. And then once we have, maybe more information populated and come up with a couple other ideas about how we want to display the information, then we can have the town, through its social media and email and everything like that, notify people, say, hey, this is available. Take a look at the information that we've compiled. So I just want to emphasize that people don't have to get stuck too much on while it's great discussion, don't get too caught up in all the nitty-gritty stuff, because I think we're gonna come to those conclusions over time, I believe.
Okay. Stan, you had something.
Yeah, a couple of things. First, Andrew, I'm looking at the site, and is there part of it is some place where I'm not looking more populated? Mostly what I see are just strategies in a couple of element areas. Am I like?
No, all the elements are there.
So,
Yeah. No,
So,
but I mean,
Yep.
we haven't folded in any of, like, for example, John's transportation stuff into
Yeah,
transportation.
not yet. No, because we were trying to figure out which direction we wanted to go, Stan.
Oh, okay. I want to make sure I'm on the same page as you guys. Because
Yes,
I'm looking at this and I'm saying, yeah, you can publish this, but there's not much there. So as far as the framework goes,
Not much there yet.
Yeah, I mean,
but Andrew said he wants to, pull the trigger and, put a link to this. So if people start looking at it and go, what do you got? What are you telling me here? I don't understand. What is this all about?
So I might push back a little bit just to say, I mean, I think I'm not saying the thing is done by any stretch. But if you go, for instance, to the land use page, you've got all the strategies up there. There are 9 strategies for land use. That's what's in the master
I
plan.
got that.
You pull up strategy number 1. There's a set of bullet points. You pull up strategy 2. There's bullets there. Strategy 3 is very well populated. Strategy 4, a couple bullets. Strategy 5, a couple bullets. Then you get down to strategy 6. Some of these things are more so, it may not be that there isn't progress to report. It may be that we need to dig a little deeper to really identify what progress, if any, has been made. And it's a little more in the weeds. Strategy 7 is info populated. Strategy 8 does, and strategy 9 does not. But I would say, like a decent amount of this. I mean, there's definitely some meat on the bones. It's when you start to get into. I think we're working through economic development right now. And then you get into transportation and additional ones. So I would say, I'd say a third of the site is getting to the point where it has to be done. There's no question. And I'm not saying we need to blast it from the hills to say this is a done deal. But I think we're getting to the point where we have information that if someone stumbled upon this and looked at it, it wouldn't be as if, there was nothing.
Andrew, I stand corrected. I think one of the problems about this, and I'm as guilty as any other member of the public, I forgot that there's all that stuff hidden under these strategies. So
you got to click on it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's an issue right there. Is we need to make sure that people know there's a lot of information underneath the strategy definition, if you will. So they'll go there. So yeah. So I think back to, there's a fine line between streamlining and obscuring, or too much hiding, right? To being too coy about hiding the data because you don't want people to get overwhelmed by it, versus having them not know it's there. So just think about that a little bit, because I think in kind of a use case sort of a way, a lot of people would not do that. They would not click on that arrow. They would not think, oh, there's the arrow. There must be a lot of good stuff underneath that. Not.
So it could be a usability item, right? Just to make
and that could be easily addressed. I leave that up to you guys to think about. But just so I stand corrected about the content.
Just to be clear, I'm happy to make any changes. If you guys feel as though it's a little tricky to identify and uncover the content inside the strategies, I'm happy to change that up. My thinking on it originally was, this is just my personal preference. I think it's a little bit overwhelming and unappealing from a visual standpoint to have just like a page blanketed with bullet points. Just, I think that's a little bit much. And we do try to make a point at the top of each page, click any strategy below to reveal updates in progress. So hopefully people see that. But maybe we just need to do a better job of pointing that out, or maybe this is another.
I think it's perfectly clear.
Instead of an arrow, maybe you put a plus there, Andrew. But that's a web page formatting thing. Yeah. Backing up a bit, just for the sake of time and keeping things moving. So, can I ask, get a general consensus? Are we okay as a group working with the web page that's been established? And two action items moving forward is to, one, establish semi-general narratives for each category to be placed on this website, and then in addition to that is trying to fill in current statuses for elements that we don't have them for, if applicable. If there's no action, there's no action. But just to try to finish going through that first initial exercise of establishing updates for those strategies that we can provide updates and or links to town reports, web pages, whatever, where applicable. And that when we have our next meeting, we can get a better update of where we've completed that exercise, and then we can start taking that information and populating it to the website in some fashion. So, I mean, are there any objections to moving to using that as an action?
I think that all sounds. I think that all sounds good, John. I think a perfect example of that is taking the stuff that Meredith had done for public facilities, and moving that under the appropriate strategies once they're in that element section. As an example, I think, of what you're saying. Is that right? Am I right in that?
I mean, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Is like,
that makes sense to me.
Okay.
John, I agree with the approach. I just have a question on kind of when and content gets there, how content gets there, what qualifications, and a very specific item under land use, strategy 3 about zoning. There's a comment there, great comments about things that have already been approved, Osgood, the senior center. I think there's Burton Wolf, different buildings, the redo of the Ethan Allen building. Then it also mentioned things that aren't done yet and aren't improved, namely the Trinity and Royal Crest potential redevelopment. Any concerns about posting things here because it has not been voted on, it has not been endorsed by the planning board. Does that belong here? When do things get listed here?
So I know, sorry, I know for some of the elements I've noted and used the word potential or potentially. Nothing that so for Royal Crest, where it's applicable to a couple strategies, there exists a potential based on further development within the proposed Royal Crest project. So you can touch on it. You're not making any concrete stance on it because again you're using the word potential, but you're also using that to illustrate that this particular strategy is being discussed or worked on at this time.
Okay, I would just suggest that the tone of the narrative around those things, our own potentials and discussions, are written in such a way that it's very descriptive, that it does not show endorsement by any town board or the town itself, because these are big issues for our town, and we should just try to, with that narrative, be very factual and
word
not imply
choice
any support.
Word choice is key there.
So on that, just real quick, and I'll just respond just because to answer Kelly's initial question, how did it get here? So I think that's one that I actually drafted. And to give you my thought process on that, so the strategy under which it is focus new development and zoning changes along key commercial corridors that may be more appropriate for higher density mixed use development and key nodes or intersections. So my literal, when I read that, I take it at face value. My literal reading of it is it's not asking for projects that are completed in that regard. It's asking for essentially what efforts are being made in that regard. And whether someone agrees with the project or think it's a good idea or not, that is a project, the Royal Crest project, that is under consideration, if you will. So in the language there, it reads, town officials and the planning board are currently in discussions with Trinity Financial about a potential mixed-use development of the Royal Crest Estates property. And I know the proposed...
that certainly qualifies as new development along key commercial corridors.
Well, that's my thinking. And again,
I
think one more thing is just that, we're very careful here in saying the proposed redevelopment would require an amendment to the town zoning bylaw and town meeting approval. So I hope no one ever construes that to mean that this is a done deal or that people are...
Well, when I'm reading it, and I'm obviously in a lot of the meetings about it, I read that to read a little bit more support so maybe it's rather than words discussions, right? It's let's use the terms that the boards are actually doing, right? What is, where is it in the stage in the planning board? Where is it this? Just so it's very specific and very factual. My 2 cents.
Okay, yeah, and again, we're more than happy to make those adjustments to language if you have a different term you want to use. Just because
I would ask you, I guess, Andrew and Jean, what's the term that it's going through the planning board right now? What would be the board term? Is
it's on the agenda as a discussion item every single week.
Yeah,
so it's listed under discussion items.
It's tricky because this one isn't technically it's not before you with an application, right? Because it's not the zoning bylaw hasn't been approved. So that's the tricky part. But I get how
that go on here then, yet or not? Maybe if it's not before us, if it's just a discussion item.
I think it's hard not to include it. I mean, it's a big item that is again, it's like we're talking about zoning changes along key commercial corridors, higher density mixed use development, key nodes and key intersections. I mean, it kind of hits all those things. I get where you're coming from, Kelly, but I think it's tough not to include it. I feel like on the other end of the spectrum, someone who knows about what's going on in town might read this and read that section, and if it's not there, be like, where's Royal Crest?
Exactly. And I think if it's not transparent and it's not consistent, so I think we have to just understand there'll never be perfect word choice that will resonate exactly the same and ideally with all. So I think we do need to be comfortable, but part of what we have to be comfortable with is there's going to be an adjective, a verb, or an adverb that somebody's going to misconstrue, and that's kind of where we are. But we have to be transparent about anything as significant as that. If we don't speak to it, I think then everybody's going to look at what else, other big things are we not mentioning are under consideration or being
And
pursued.
Kelly, this committee presented at town meeting your rubric, which spoke to how it positively, negatively, or neutrally aligned with the master plan itself. So
So
Yeah,
back
good
in
point. So maybe, so John, I'll defer to you and kind of let it go. Like, I think being the language and when things make it here is important. And that we need to make, in my opinion, that it just needs to be factual and not.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. The word choice has to be
Totally
crucial.
agree.
Again, if it's
Clinical.
already out in the public domain, then we should have no problem commenting or making note of it. Backing up a bit to Andrew relative to that particular element, yeah, there's the Royal Crest, but we can also cite the 125 corridor plan because that's identical. So there's other stuff that we can present in that explanation prior to that have already been discussed, and then put the Royal Crest thing at the end where that's up and that's in discussion. But we've had examples of mixed use development going down. The Forgetta Farm thing where we have mixed use going in, that's done, being built.
Yep.
We have the Route 125 corridor study plan, which is in the future, and then we have on top of that potential impacts from the Royal Crest development. Something to that effect.
All of that,
again, it's how we word it, but that's typifies the kind of answer we can put.
all of that's in there. And I would just quickly say one last thing on the wording, because I appreciate Kelly's concern. It's a valid concern. But I would just say that, myself, and I'm speaking for Gene and Dan, I would say that they're probably as equally concerned, because at the end of the day, if there's something inaccurate in any of this content, the more likely scenario is someone's going to call us and say, call us as staff and say, well, what's going on with this? I mean, not to say they wouldn't call a member of the planning board if they know you or email you or potentially as a master plan implementation committee member, but the likelihood is they're going to call Gene as the planning director or myself or Dan as the staff planner, and they're going to be like, well, I thought there was a different status for this project, but you say on this page it's something else. So wording definitely is important, and I'm cognizant of it just because I know I'm going to receive a phone call if something isn't put out there in the correct light. So point well taken.
Okay.
All right, so I think we have some semblance of direction where we want to go. A little bit of homework on our hands to do some writing.
Can I just ask this to put the web page to bed? Do we want to hold off on soft publishing it until we have more content, or do people feel like? And what I guess I'm getting at is, do you guys want to take a vote to just affirm your feeling on the web page that it's appropriate to publish, or do you want to continue to build out the content? And you wouldn't have to vote if you wanted to continue to build out the content. We can just just not take action on it.
My personal preference would be to wait until we have a little bit more content, particularly some introduction to the whole web area, as well as some narrative like Jay has been suggesting in each of the element areas. But that's just my preference. So
okay,
and I know you, Andrew, you and Gene and Dan have invested a lot of time in putting together a lot of that information there, which is all excellent, of course. I'm just thinking I'd like to see it look a little bit more like what the target web site is going to look like before we actually publish it. That's my preference.
But I'm sorry, Stan, I don't understand. The target website, how is that different from this web site that
I'm looking at this as an outline with some content in it that the staff has put together, and we've got more areas to flesh out, and we've got some narrative to sort of lead into what this is all about. This just sort of plugs people in the middle of 7 elements, right? What are they supposed to think when they look at that, George? They start clicking on things? What?
well, I interpret I interpret the web page that's called MPIC Implementation Web Page. It's item 5B.
Yep.
That web page, I interpret to be a draft of a web page that is going to be made public, and we can talk about when it's going to be made public. But it's going to be made public. And now you talk about another web page, and I'm thinking, what
No,
other?
no. I'm talking about the same webpage, George. And
Okay.
I'm talking about when is it going to be made public? George,
Well-
when do you think it should be made public?
Well, what I would suggest is, to tell you the truth, I didn't understand. I'm confessing that I didn't know as much as I didn't understand. What we were talking about at last meeting. Now I do, and I feel like, please give me a month to draft, and with my fellow committee members to draft responses to what's there, and possibly new items for the housing and the land use strategy. And if we all did that, I mean, if everybody of all the subcommittees would take the responsibility to let's say draft a final form for that webpage, and then we could talk about it next month, but possibly next month we'd be ready to go public.
I'm of the mind that there's no absolute rush to get this posted, and I'd rather have something a little more robust to when we were to theoretically go live. So yeah, like I said, if we can kind of get our ducks in a row and touch base at our next meeting and see where we're at, then maybe at that point we give the go ahead to post the information.
So with that, can I get, and just to be clear, I'm totally comfortable with that, and I'm not in any way trying to rush the publishing of this website. My only any sense of urgency that I have on publishing the website is only rooted in the fact that we've been talking about the idea of how to publish, our collective progress towards getting information out to the public as a committee. And so I just want to make sure that we do that so that you guys feel comfortable that we're putting that information out there. But yes, to the extent that we can further develop this, great. Can I suggest, if you're comfortable with this, John, do you want to collect any, or do you want to delegate to someone, or someone else can do this, collect all the feedback or any other content information that they want to see uploaded to the site, and then have that by a certain date, and then they can pass that on to me and Dan, and we can make sure that that's integrated so that it can be looked at the next meeting?
So
I can. So are you talking within our group here?
Yeah, and
Okay.
Dan and I
Yeah. So
Dan and I continue to update individual strategy pieces. I'm talking about more the other stuff we've been talking about, like
I sort of hate to say this, but there's kind of an open meeting law issue here, right? We should send the stuff probably to you, Andrew, right? Rather than circulate it among ourselves, except for us that have working groups. So whatever we have done, we should probably send to you, so we're not, quote, discussing it.
Well,
Yeah,
what I
fine.
figured, Stan.
That's fine.
What?
I'm comfortable with that. That's fine. I just want to make sure that there's a central, that we're collecting some amount of information, putting it on the webpage, so that we can be having this conversation next month and see the webpage a little different, a little more updated, and with some of the content that people want to see there, or in the format that they want to see it there. If the prevailing thought, for instance, is to eliminate the click and expose the different bullet points, then we can do that. If people want to keep it like the way it is now, that's fine too. I need to have that feedback so that we're not going around every meeting and with the same.
Yeah.
And from a content perspective, we need to have an alignment on what we consider a definition of an air quote done is. Because what I heard is there is an interest in creating, similar to what Jay did for transportation, kind of an executive summary statement that we need for each of the other major sections is what I heard. And then people who haven't had a chance to go back through the kind of the strategy areas to do that checking in progress, which I think then also needs to be vetted to be sure that, Meredith's interpretation of where we are on various things is in fact accurate. Because I spent a lot of time searching and reading, but I may have misunderstood something. And so I wouldn't say take what I wrote and just put it out there. As an expert eye needs to look at that and say, yeah, that's an appropriate interpretation. No, that's not even, doesn't even apply to that strategy.
So to make that simple, I would say let Dan, myself, and Jean be the gatekeeper of the, and not to say that we're the end all be all or that we're going to keep, I mean, certainly, something might happen where one of us posts something that's not worded well, or, is not, maybe by accident, we post something that's not totally accurate. But generally speaking, I think that we can easily verify the accuracy of progress of projects. We can interface with our colleagues here at Town Hall to see where things stand on certain projects. So we won't publish anything or put anything on the site that we don't believe is accurate. So I'll look through what you put in that document, Meredith, and we'll certainly populate it in this.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So
I was hoping you'd volunteer.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Dan and I have been working on it anyway. It's all good.
so,
I think it's actually kind of fun. So
Andrew, if it's okay by you, as a follow-up to the meeting, I'd like to send an email, basically with all the appropriate links and with the action items we discussed here, just as a follow-up to the meeting. Is that okay to do?
Yeah, if you just blind copy folks, I think that's the best way to do it. Just and for people not to discuss it over email. You can send the information out as a directive, and
Okay.
then they can have their marching orders, and then we'll reconvene at the next meeting to discuss any progress on it.
All right, awesome. All right, so I think for the sake of time, I think the website and the elements and strategy, I think we have a plan moving forward. The only other thing I had on the agenda was discussion regarding our quarterly report for the last quarter of 2021. I drafted up a quick one in conjunction with Andrew. I don't know, Andrew, do we want to should we share it on the screen? I don't know if people had a chance to look at it.
I'm happy to share it if that's helpful to folks.
If you don't mind.
I don't. Give me one moment here. And for folks watching at home, if anybody's watching, this is briefly on the agenda under number 5, new business, review, discussion, and vote quarterly report for fourth quarter 2021. All right, can you guys see this?
Yep.
Great. I will zoom in a little bit.
1 second.
So John kind of kept the same format here that you have been working through.
So I didn't want to get crazy, but I figured, definitive items that we've discussed, I tried to include here.
Now, did we actually review the facilities master plan too?
Oh, good question.
We actually didn't dive into it.
Okay. So and did we actually formally review MassDOT, the Route 114 reconstruction? Did we review them? I mean, I know there was discussions about them, but
I thought we kind of did the framework. I thought we applied the framework to it. I could be wrong.
John, I think we applied the framework to something right before
Downtown.
before the handoff.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I don't think I ever included that in a quarterly report, so that might still be out there to get included.
Okay.
And we voted on it the day because we did the rubric and we voted it on it, whatever day that was.
Was it the Royal Crest?
I thought we did the
No.
downtown. Didn't we do the downtown
The
plan?
downtown master plan improvements for the business district. That's what it was.
Yep.
That's what it was.
That's the one we did.
All right.
okay. So then, given that, I'm going to request that, and again, you're not going to see it here, but like that, because we should, if we can, try to vote on and approve this report tonight if we can. So I'm just going to say, that we will strike the MassDOT project and facilities master plan as having been reviewed and replace it with the downtown improvement master plan.
Correct.
Are people okay with that in this particular section?
Yes.
Yes.
And
Yes.
John, I would suggest to attaching the completed rubric for the downtown in here, because that was always well received by the select board and the planning board.
Yep, we can do that. Assuming I can find it. Yes, I'm sure it's available.
Yep. All right. Then I added some kind of generic language relative to what we're doing this quarter.
What, John? I just have a question. What's your thought on anything else we would do for the Royal Crest redevelopment activity? Is there something else we should or need to do with that?
It's always on the planning. And Kelly might be able to chime in or Gene.
I thought we said that we are not going to review that proposal. I mean, that's the planning board's job, and we're not going to try to compete with them or replace them.
No, if there's any big shifts in it, though.
Well, as I said, we'll continue to monitor.
That's why I added as warranted at the end there.
Yeah, that's what we had.
Why don't you just say
That was my
provide an update?
recollection. Yeah, if necessary. It's kind of, we'll look at it again if warranted, if needed.
Yeah, I'd take out the word review. I don't think that's, maybe
we're assessing our consistency with the master plan or something, or assessing.
Remain informed.
yes, whatever. Something. Let Andrew come up with some words.
Continue discussion.
Continue to monitor the proposed Royal Crest redevelopment as warranted.
Correct.
Continue to monitor.
So continue to monitor is what we're going with. Okay.
Yes.
Write that down, John. Just to
continue to monitor.
Okay.
I got it.
Great. And I added that piece about the webpage. As you know, I'm the gung-ho guy on the webpage here. So
Yeah,
I want to be really aware that it's going down.
That's good. That's accurate. That bullet should stay.
Yeah, right.
So, I mean, like I said, I don't want to get too crazy, but at least we have something concrete to present, as a review. So,
well, and it gives you and Meredith a chance to use this as kind of a stepping off point to have a discussion with both those boards.
So, great. Does anybody see anything glaring here that we should be adding in terms of language or content to the report?
So I'd move to approve the quarterly report as amended.
Okay, that's Stan. Seconded by Meredith.
Yep.
All right, do a quick roll here. Just going by who I see on my screen. I apologize if I don't. George?
Yes.
Okay. J. Dowd?
Yes.
Dan Lippert?
Yes.
Meredith Barnes Cook?
Yes.
Sean McDonough?
Yes.
Kelly Cormier?
Yes.
And myself, Jonathan Strauss, is a yes.
Great. And John, just so you know how this goes, I will send I'll amend it. I'll have you review it to make sure that it's in keeping with what we just discussed. And then we'll send it off to the select board and the planning board. And then if, either you or Meredith, or both you and Meredith can attend the board meetings just to interface with those boards to give them an update on what's going on based on this report.
Perfect. Yeah. Sounds good.
And John and Meredith, I just sent you what I looked quickly at trying to find the last version that we did for the downtown improvement that we voted on. And I just tagged the two of you or shared it with you, whatever Google term I need to use. So
okay. Yep.
you
No,
can
I
see
just
it
read
formatted.
stuff on here. So perfect.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. All right. Well, unless anybody has anything additional, I guess we need a motion to close the meeting.
Actually, John,
Check that. Sorry, we need to set a next meeting time.
and also just before we do that, let me just quickly say to the group, if anyone has other agenda items, other things, because obviously we've been talking about, the website, other things. If you have other agenda items, feel free to send them to John. I'm always going to John, like a week and a half before the meeting to set the agenda. So if you have stuff and you want it seen on the next agenda, make sure you let him know and he can work with me to get it on there. All right, next meeting.
All right.
Well, February 7th is a month from now.
I have it open. I don't know if anybody else does.
Good. That's a Monday?
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, because the 14th is Valentine's Day, and
Yeah.
who knows what people have for plans. So
Yeah, and school vacation week isn't until the end of February. It was later, right? Yeah, so the 7th works.
That's the week of the 21st. Yeah, I'll be out that week, so that's a good call to avoid that week.
all right. So it sounds like the 7th's the leader in the clubhouse.
Does that work for folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome.
All right. I'll get it sent out.
Thank you.
So now can we have a motion to adjourn?
Are you offering?
I
a motion
move
to
that we adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
All right. Do a quick roll and we're out of here. Hopefully. All right. Let's see. Meredith Burns Cook,
Yes.
George Kohler,
Yes.
Stan Limpert,
Yes.
Kelly Cornier,
Yes.
Jay Dowd,
Yes.
Sean McDonough,
Yes.
and myself, Jonathan Strauss, is a yes.
All right. Thanks all.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Stay warm.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good evening.
All right, Bill at NACAM, we're all set. Thank you.